You're listening to Double Tap, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Oh, hello. Welcome to another Double Tap. It is I, Stephen Scott.
Oh, I do like that. You're sounding more cheerful already. Hello, it is I, Shaun Preece. Hello, welcome to Double Tap.
And I am in no way coffee-fueled.
I don't believe that for a second.
No, you're absolutely right not to believe that. I am coffee-fueled, and in fact will continue to be coffee-fueled through the course of this episode. Brought to you by coffee. The only way to stay awake.
I'm up for that because I've got to say it, Stephen Scott. I was slightly worried about you yesterday. You sounded
what was
a
wrong
little
with me
bit down.
yesterday? I was really down yesterday. I was like,
You
I
were.
have to apologise. I was miserable yesterday.
Yes, you were. Well, as I said at the time, we all have those blind days, right?
Yeah. No, I feel better today. I do.
Good.
I am coffeeed up. I'm fine. Got a great chat today with an audiologist. We've never really dug into the subject of hearing aids on the show. And I think it's a good time because, of course, with AirPods Pro 2 getting that hearing aid functionality, bringing it into line with other over-the-counter hearing aids.
What does that mean?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. It's like, well, what does all that mean and how does that compare? Because the question I've got really is, how does that compare with other over-the-counter hearing aids and more what you might call medical-grade hearing aids? And is there a difference between them? Because this is an area I just don't know, but there's lots of people out there who are low vision or blind who are having hearing issues as well.
Yeah, of
obviously
course.
deaf-blind people as well. So, for those who use hearing aids or who might need hearing aids, there is a question mark here. And again, accessibility and all of that comes into it. There's lots to talk about.
It's one of those topics we hear quite a lot, and we hear these words thrown around, OTC, over-the-counter, clinical grade, medical grade. And honestly, I just sort of say, yeah. I don't know what they mean, so we're going to get an expert in to tell us.
That's right. That's the double tap way of doing it.
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
know. So we've got someone in who knows something. I said at the start of the season, we're going to get people on here who know what they're talking about. That does not include us.
No.
But other people who do know things.
We're just the middlemen.
Exactly.
We put people together, you and experts.
That's right.
And on that, actually, beautiful listeners out there, how you doing?
Best looking listeners we have, I
Ever
don't
saw.
know. Yeah.
Yes.
Ever not saw.
I have a request because VPNs, as we know, the Meta Ray-Ban, Meta AI debate rages on. Is it available? Is it not available? Who knows? It seems not to be. So VPNs are the answer, an app that allows you to say, hey, I'm not actually where I am. I'm in another country and therefore get access to those features. A listener got in touch. I believe it was Anthony. Hello, Anthony. And I did promise I'll get back to you about how to use the Windscribe VPN, which is one that's been bandied out a lot in the various social media groups as it's a free VPN. So I tried it out. I've got to say, I struggled with it as well. I couldn't really get it to work. I was setting it to a different country and trying to click connect. And anyway, I really struggled with it. So I want our listeners' experiences out there of VPNs. Which is the most accessible one? Which one would you recommend? It doesn't have to be free. If it's a paid for one, that's absolutely fine as well. I've tried PIA. I believe that's called Personal Internet Access VPN.
Private internet access, isn't it?
Oh, is it private? Sorry, thank you. You're probably right.
It's kind
Private
of clues in the
internet
name,
access.
right? With being a VPN, it's about privacy. So remember, so that you can search online for your wife's birthday present.
Yes,
and not
obviously.
be caught. That's exactly why people are buying VPNs.
Well,
Get real.
There are so many out there. Nord, Tunnel Bear, Surfshark. There's just so many. But obviously for us, it comes down to which ones are voiceover friendly or the most accessible ones out there, easy to use. Or Talkback.
Or
yes,
Jaws.
Sorry. Yeah, okay, right. Thank
Narrator.
you. So let me...
VDA.
Stop.
Window
I'm going to cut
eyes.
that coffee off. I preferred it when you were miserable.
HAL.
Basically, let me know.
HAL compliant. There's a question.
Let me know. Shut up. Let me know your experiences of VPNs. Which ones work for you? Which ones are accessible? Thank you.
God, yesterday I was miserable. Today you're taking the turn of it. I can't keep up.
Sorry. Okay, let's carry on. What are we talking about? Is there any feedback?
Well, we're going to be talking about hearing aids. That's I just told you we're going to talk
I
about
know that.
Before that, we're going to get into some emails. And this one is one up from, I think this may change our mood a little bit. I'm warning you now. But this is from John.
Hello there. I'm guessing that this email isn't going to be of the slightest interest to your listeners, but a while ago I emailed you because I was possibly going to adopt a Labrador, and you asked for an update. So here it is.
Yes.
We've had Kirby now for a couple of months. She's just turned 4. She is a chocolate Labrador, or brushed desert cocoa bean, as Apple might say. She was an ex-breeder rescued from Ireland. It turns out that a rescue is nothing like a puppy. She had obviously been quite badly traumatized. For the first few weeks, we could barely get her inside the house. We both work at home, and trying to use a screen reader with a dog barking noisily at every sound the neighbours make, real or imagined, is not easy. I can't say I was a lot of help when we tried to herd her inside. I was basically like a traffic cone in the garden, and occasionally I'd hear her pass by. During this time, we often had to keep the back door open at night, as she wouldn't come in, and I had to sleep downstairs by the door. But, despite the PTSD, thank God for the squeaky ball. Even at her worst times, she would still run after it if we threw it, just drop it a few feet away so she didn't get close. Doing this on my own was a bit of a pain. The Meta Ray-Bans were of no use at all in locating them. Be My Eyes on the glasses would have been amazing. The only thing that it usefully answered was, "What is my Labrador doing?" If she was lying down, then I could tap the arms and get a sneaky bit of my audiobook in. If she was standing, it meant shuffling around the lawn looking for the balls. But, bit by bit, she started dropping the balls nearer, and occasionally I even got a sneaky touch as she passed by. Fast forward to now, and she comes barreling back and then drops the ball right next to me and rolls over or comes in for a bit of slobbery cuddle. Every day starts out with her running away from me, but usually an hour or so later, she is drooling over my hands or chewing my jumper. I've never had a dog I can't see before, but I did discover that the tiny gap in the fog in my peripheral vision means I have been able to just about make out a waggy tail from time to time. And sometimes, if I lean my head in a strange way, I can find a ball. But honestly, it hallucinates worse than ChatGPT. Fortunately, she is so heavy I can hear her legs clattering around all over the place when she knows it's playtime, so I can get a sense of how she is feeling. As far as house training goes, she has only had accidents when left alone overnight. The first 2 nights I came down, and it was like stepping into Chernobyl with a toy Geiger counter. I knew something was there, but was not going anywhere near it without a hazmat suit. Now she comes into the bedroom at night. She hasn't had any more accidents, but they did become a lot less dramatic. I can't say I've been the slightest use to my wife in terms of picking anything up, however. Things are mostly pretty good now. The main problem we have is that she is starting her puppyhood now, but in a 34-kilo adult dog's body, and she is very strong and not at all trained. She only accepted a treat from my wife's hand for the first time last week. On walks, she pulls us all over the place, and the other day she ripped her seatbelt out in the car. Wow. Fortunately, on walks it is more over-enthusiasm than fear, and only occasionally does she have a trigger. The other blind man problem I've had is that she has a tendency to sleep horizontally, right in the middle of where I'm about to walk, so I have adopted a not-so-impressive grandpa shuffle around the house. I was worried she might be afraid of the cane, but she recognises the sound of it extending as playtime. So, if anything, it just fires her up even more. She seems to be heavily armour-plated, and any minor accidents appear to have gone unnoticed. There's a long way to go, and we have up and down days, but it's impossible not to fall for such an affectionate dog. The great thing about dogs is that they don't have the slightest concept of blindness. They just get on with it and expect the same from you. All I would say to anyone getting a puppy is to make sure you do the background checks and go somewhere reputable. It breaks my heart that someone like Kirby could be treated in that way. We got her from a charity called Many Tears, and they sometimes come back from Ireland with over 40 dogs at a time. Anyway, sorry I couldn't keep this short. Feel free not to read this out, as it's even less blind and tech-related than your podcast. Keep up the good work. I still listen every day and love what you do. We've had a lot of stressful days, both with Kirby and dealing with Dippy the guide dog's cancer before that, and you give me a real lift at the end of the day. In particular, I can't tell you how much I needed your debate about whether trains had wheels at the time. John from Northampton.
John, thank you so much for that. Thank you for the update. And yeah, sorry to hear about Dippy.
Lovely email. Yeah, of
but,
course.
And also sorry to hear about Kirby as well. I mean, it does. It just... it's so hard. Those ads come on TV. You see these ads for dog charities and dogs that rescue shelters, what have you.
Yeah,
and you just sit there with, like, just going, give it them all. I'll take them all.
How anyone can mistreat any animal, but a dog, it gets you so angry, doesn't it? But
it should be sentenced to death.
Well, I did hold back, but I'm not going to disagree with you. It's absolutely disgusting. But
I've got a defenseless animal. I mean, come on.
Yeah, of course. But I don't want to dwell on that. I want to say though, I mean, your patience with that. I think it's really important. Something else to pick up though is the amount of work and patience and responsibility a dog is. I think people really do need to understand that. Because it isn't easy, as your email shows.
No, it's not.
The rewards are amazing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the Chernobyl with the toy Geiger counter was just a fantastic
Only all trained up now?
Thankfully, yes. Thankfully, things are. I will say, though, it's funny. Just the other day, I noticed for the first time how big he's getting. He's really broad now.
Yes.
And, it's really kind of filling out. And you think, goodness me, this. And apparently they don't stop growing until, I think my wife said, 18 months.
Right.
So.
Oh, they're like little tanks, aren't they?
Oh, wow. I mean, unbelievable. Because at first when we got them, with Coco, she's just playing around with them and she's much bigger at that point, Labrador as she is. Not a big Labrador, though, quite a small Labrador. But even so, next to him as a puppy, really, really, gigantic. Yeah. And, they're rolling around on the floor and they're having fun. And I'm thinking, at some point, a leg's going to break or something's going to happen. And, now both of them are like tanks going around. So they just have huge amounts of fun. And you just let them battle about.
I know.
And just have
They're
fun.
more dangerous to us than us to them. Absolutely. With a stick. I've got to say, yes, you won't hurt them.
The whole lying across thing, that's every dog, I think. That's every single dog.
It's funny.
My mate of mine had a guide dog who used to do that all the time. I think the dog was just doing it to annoy me.
Well, my friends usually say, he knows, he knows you can't.
He knows.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. No,
he's just doing his own thing.
Not a clue. But, equally, they probably pick up on, I think it's not they pick up blindness. What they can pick up is how close they can get to you. And then you realise that, that they're there. I think that's what they pick up on.
Oh, yeah. They'll pick your hands up, right? Put their nose under your hands so they know they're there. They just get used to how you are.
But it says a lot about you, John, because a rescue dog takes a long time, especially when, they've gone through ill treatment, to trust again. And the fact that the dog was starting to come to you, I think ultimately, I think this is true for most things in life. I think animals, other people, don't really see blind people as a threat on any level.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're just not a threat. We're not threatening kind of people. I might sound like I am, but when I walk into a room and I, walk straight into a wall, that seems to dissipate very quickly, that threat.
Dogs just reflect whatever you give to them. So
yeah.
As that showed there, you put the time in, and well done, you.
Yeah, listen, I'm really glad
and
you
your
got
wife,
in touch.
By the way, should say
yes, that's right. Who does all the work? Yeah,
yes,
we know how it works, John. We understand. Okay, let's move on to this from Molly.
Hello, Double Tap team. It's Molly here. A few episodes ago, Stephen, you mentioned the Parcel app. I've downloaded it and it's nice. I paid the premium subscription for the push notifications. But my question is, it doesn't tell you if a parcel's been delivered unless it's Amazon integration. You have to mark the delivery as delivered. Is that normal? Never used it before, so it's quite new to me, but really liking it. Loving hearing about all the Be My Eyes features. And I'm hoping that audio description will be supplied at more concerts, Shaun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thanks for that, Molly.
The Parcel app, Stephen Scott, on your recommendation, you said this was amazing and fantastic. So what's the problem here?
Oh, I had it from someone else. So, No, honestly, it's a brilliant app. You're right. Some providers do. It's all down to the courier. It's all down to the delivery company, the logistics company behind the delivery. Some are very good. What you will find, though, and I think it depends, because I've heard experiences in other countries where it's like up to the second almost information you're getting. I have found that if an item's delivered, it will mark as delivered eventually. But sometimes that could be the next day. It could be 2 days later.
Oh, well, that's useful.
I know it's not ideal, but you
Well,
can go in and mark
your
it.
front door.
You can mark it as delivered if you know it's delivered. But if you don't know, but that's exactly what happened to me. Something arrived a day later. I found it outside because I had no idea it was delivered. But then it told me a day later it had been delivered. Now, what it doesn't do, and this is the other annoyance, and again, this is not the app's fault. This is down to the provider. When it says delivered, it could have been 2 days ago. You don't know. It doesn't tell you that. It doesn't say it was delivered 2 days ago. It says it's delivered. So you have to kind of just, go with it. I mean...
Hang on. No, wait. You're losing me here, because isn't the whole raison d'etre of this app, the whole point of it is that you can track your packages?
Yes, and it's quite good at doing that. But the delivery part seems to be...
When they're near your house.
And sometimes the information's scant as well. Sometimes it might be, it's left the warehouse. It doesn't give you any more updates than that. It does depend on the provider. Amazon are good at it. They've got a good logistics service because they do it themselves, and the Amazon integration is in the app. And I think what needs to happen is more companies need to develop for it. I've actually suggested this to InnerSearch, for example, because InnerSearch have this, obviously fantastic website. You can buy things. It's all accessible. But one of the challenges is getting tracking information. And I was suggesting maybe being able to link into or integrate into the Parcel app could be really useful, especially if you're purchasing through Amazon as well. So it could kind of all link up. Yeah, look, it is... Mileage varies depending on the provider. Some will give you no information. Some will give you loads of information. I think DHL, what used to be TNT, I think that those are all really kind of big logistics companies with excellent track records and all their information gathering.
Yes.
So, you'll get good, although if it's a local company, you might not get that at all. It's interesting, actually, because totally different thing, but I was on a bus the other day, and I opened up the Move It app, and there's a live location function you have to pay premium for, but you can get live location. So basically you can track where you are, the bus you're on, and also it'll tell you when to get off the bus.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's great. And I
like
double
to move it.
Yeah, I like to move it as well. But unfortunately, I couldn't move it on this particular day because it said that live location was not available on the bus I was on.
Oh, it was an unknown bus.
It was unknown.
You sure it was a bus?
I was going to say maybe I wasn't even on a bus. Who knows? But no, I mean, it just obviously that bus or that company or that particular service was off. I don't know. This is the problem. You see, you kind of immediately assume it's the app or it's the other. But if the companies aren't providing the information, then you're not going to get the information. Simple as that. So yeah. I think it's a mileage may vary thing. Hopefully it'll improve.
It seems like a good thing if you use Amazon a lot. I would say that probably.
Well, yeah, that's kind of why I got it. But, I have used it to track other parcels. And, at least what I do find quite good, like there's a parcel I've not received. Remember I told you I bought the little Keychron numpad?
Yes.
Never showed up. Never arrived.
Oh.
And as far as my because I managed to get a tracking number, put it into Parcel, and it tells me it's in Germany. And it's remaining there, so I don't think it's coming.
Oh.
I don't think it wants to leave.
No, it knows.
It's quite happy where it is. I mean, Germany's a nice country. Why wouldn't you want to be there?
Yeah, exactly. Wunderbar.
Well, Berlin markets.
I found a parcel in my bin the other week, and it's like there was
Yes.
no card through my door, nothing, and the bin was out the front because it was bin day the next day to get it emptied, and someone put a parcel in it. It's like. What
Did
are
I tell you about
thinking?
the time of the dog food? That happened to me. Someone put the parcel of dog food into the bin on bin day, and then the bin men came, emptied the bin.
Yeah, what a
so
surprise.
I did get the parcel.
Yes. Anyway.
Hilarious. I laughed all my way to the complaints desk. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Molly. I know that's not really answering your question, but it's kind of why it's the way it is. Paul is in touch on the subject of ZoomText.
Hi, Stephen, Shaun, and Laura. I've got a question, and I'm hoping your audience can help with it. I'm partially sighted and rely on ZoomText and ZoomText Fusion magnification software on Windows PCs. In recent years, ZoomText has become really sluggish, even when running it on very high-spec devices for both work or home use. I've used Macs and the built-in magnifier tool in Windows 11, but to be productive, I keep coming back to ZoomText. I'm pondering switching over to buying a new M4 Mac and installing Parallels or VMware Fusion so that I can run ZoomText in a virtual machine on my Mac. I tried the Mac native version of ZoomText a few years ago, as well as using Boot Camp, but the experience was rubbish back then. Have any of your listeners who have low sight got any experience of installing ZoomText on an M4-based, i.e. ARM-based, Mac more recently? Is performance comparable to a Windows PC? Ultimately, I'm trying to figure out whether I get a Mac Mini to run ZoomText in a virtual machine or else buy a high-spec Windows Copilot Plus PC. Any advice from others? And any tips from fellow low-sight ZoomText users on hardware to improve performance? Thanks in advance, Paul from London.
Thank you, Paul, for getting in touch. I will leave that one to the audience, I think.
It's a tricky one to answer. I don't have any experience of ZoomText at all. It's difficult. I mean, you mentioned if it's a hardware limitation, the responsiveness, or is it a case of the version of ZoomText? Did Paul mention the version he's using? I don't think so.
No, I don't think he did. But I mean, even the latest version, I mean, it's quite a gutsy piece of software. It requires good hardware, it needs good graphics. Obviously, that's how it's driving it.
Yeah, but I'm saying that the reason why he may be experiencing problems is maybe software based because it's an older version. Maybe there's some compatibility issues because, as we all know, some of this accessibility software can be years and years old because people don't update it all the time because it's so expensive to do. So I know lots of people are using older versions of Jules, right? So it could be that. But we will throw that back to the listeners. Maybe someone's got more experience.
It will be worth maybe just mentioning this, but my best experience of Windows and Zoom, a combination, was with the Mac, but not using ZoomText, not using Magnifier, but using the built-in Mac Zoom with Windows. That was actually the best way I found to do it. If you could sort of essentially work between both of them, because you can use Zoom in the virtual machine, which is kind of cool. I just, something about Zoom on the Mac just works better for me, but it's very particular. You say you're used to using ZoomText. You're obviously used to keyboard shortcuts. You're used to the flexibility. It's going to give you more functionality for sure. But, there's loads of cool things now about Zoom. I mean, one thing I love about Zoom in particular, they brought in this 2 years ago now, maybe a year ago, was the being able to independently control Zoom on each screen. So if you've got a dual screen setup, you can independently now Zoom on one screen whilst the other screen remains as is. You can even, as a keyboard shortcut, to hop you from one screen to the other without having to move the mouse over to the other screen, therefore taking your position away from the screen that you're on zoomed in. You can just bounce to the other screen, and leave the mouse where it is. So they've certainly increased the functionality. So it might be worth checking that out, but would you buy a Mac for it? I don't know. It sounds like you're a PC guy, Paul, so I don't know if you need a Mac for it. As for the Copilot Plus PCs in ZoomText, well, that's kind of a niche area, I guess, at the moment. But if anyone has any thoughts, we'd love to hear them. Do get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know Matt Ater listens as well. If Matt's got any thoughts or opinions, get in touch.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, I think Matt, or certainly we've got the guys coming on from Vespero next week.
Oh, there you go.
But Monday we'll be talking to them. So yes, we will put that question. Thank you, Shaun. That was very clever, Shaun.
Well done. I know. I'm great, me. Thank you.
You are. Okay, Paul, hopefully we'll get an answer for that soon.
Thanks,
we'll put
Paul.
the answer to the people who know. That's what we do here now at Double Tap.
Yes,
I'm not going to pretend to know anything. It's great. I love it. Okay, let's hear from Mark.
Hi, Double Tappers. I really enjoyed the AMA episode with Michael. While you were discussing the various iPhones, somebody questioned where the new SE model will fit into the Apple lineup and why would anyone want to purchase one. Even though I have a well-paying job and can afford the base or pro models, I am super resistant to paying for features that I don't use, so a sub-$500 phone is ideal for me. I try to justify the more expensive models, but I find that I mostly use my phone for SMS or WhatsApp phone calls, Spotify, podcasts, and Be My Eyes. I don't see how a more expensive phone helps with any of those. Some will say that I could buy a used iPhone 14 or 15, and while I suppose that is an option, I don't think they can be purchased for that price point. Best regards, Mark on Miami Beach.
Thanks, Mark. I got to say, I can't disagree with any of that.
No, I'm desperately trying to, but no, I can't. For me, the big thing that I noticed when I first tried the Pro range was just the battery life. The bigger the phone, the better the battery. Now, whether or not that's worth the extra money, it's a personal choice, but I can't disagree with anything you said, especially with your use case there. And to be honest, I think that's most people's use case anyway, right?
Well, battery life is important, of course, if you're out every day and you're on the move all the time, but then equally...
GPS.
And of course, the more you use your phone, the more you're going to eat up that battery, and certain apps are worse for that than others. But I don't know, are we that far away from a charging unit? Couldn't you carry a little accessible charging bank with you, or even an inaccessible one if you're feeling risky one day? I've still got the one that connects on the back of the phone. You don't sell them anymore. The one that was it called Apple MagSafe charger?
The MagSafe charger, yeah. It's a little tinky thing. It's very good.
It's nice, and it's just I've got two of them actually in the cupboard. And I refuse to get rid of them because I'm thinking, well, they charge up and they'll work forever.
I'll have one.
Oh, you want one, do you? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
I'll talk to Mrs. Scott because one's hers.
I've got to say as well, the AMA episode, we're definitely going to be doing that again. Michael was definitely amazing. Michael Babcock, of course, from Unmute Presents. Fantastic. So we're definitely going to do that again. I think the question was, though, it was the price points. Where they start to sort of get one step, what sort of at what price point does it? I might as well get the standard iPhone rather than the SE. I don't know. I can't remember now.
It's the way that the way that Apple set these prices up in a way that ideally you want to go at the next level on the first tier, but then by that point you think, well, I may as well just get this, and it's a ladder essentially. I think I'm sure marketing people would know better than me, but they used to call it the ladder approach almost, which is, you kind of step up one, you think, I may as well just go to the next step, why not? And so on. How far do you go? I think ultimately it's all down to use case for sure, but also your budget. If your budget just can't afford to go that far, then there's no need. You're going to miss out on features like, as you say, battery life, but also features like LiDAR. That's the one, I would say that's the biggest thing between having a Pro phone and a regular phone. And I don't think there's much else there's always something, I'm sure. But, I've got the iPhone 16, and I'm using the iPhone 16, not the Pro, the one Apple sent me, which is the iPhone 16. And it's actually been a really interesting test because when Apple said, look, what phone are you looking for? I said the Pro. They didn't have any available, so they said, okay, we'll send you the 16. And I thought, what a great opportunity to learn what life is like with just goodness me,
just the iPhone 16.
This thing,
you're a trooper.
This slab of glass, which apparently has a brain in it. But no, honestly, I even with battery life, it's fine. It's
you haven't missed
fine.
Any features from the Pro.
Don't get me wrong. I would love to probably have a lot of those LiDAR features, but the problem for me is I'm never out enough to justify the cost difference. That's the bottom line for me. I'm barely out of the house. So what am I using it for? Now, when we're on our travels, these things always seem great. But are you genuinely using them much? I mean, are you using LiDAR? You've got the 15 Pro Max there.
No, yeah, that's right. I wanted to stick with the Pro purely for the LiDAR reasons. Am I using it much? Honestly, no, I'm not. Yeah. Particularly, since the Meta glasses, I'm not. I just always feel I like to have it there just in case. But you're absolutely right. If it did disappear tomorrow, would I really miss it? Not convinced I would.
No, I don't know. I'm not feeling it at the moment. I think and it's funny because people want me to review this. I had someone saying, are you going to review the 16? You know what? It's an iPhone like any other iPhone. It gets to a point where what are you actually reviewing? What are you actually gaining out of that review? I'd say that the benefits of the 16 range, any of the 16 range versus anything prior, and including the SE4, although we don't know what that SE4 is going to look like yet, but, will it have, I think the things to look for, will it have an action button? Will it have a camera control button? And those are maybe things to look at that might be of interest. Because the fact is you've got, that camera control button, which is going to be used for visual intelligence. We'll see how useful that is. I think that's more appealing to us than the camera control function. You can also use it currently to launch the magnifier. So, if you want to use that and get quick access, that's a cool way to do it. But the action button, it seems to be something that's coming in as more of a standard. I mean, the fact that it's come into the 16 range and not just the Pro range as it was in the 15s last year.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Says that's becoming a regular thing. So the question is, what will the SE have? Once we see it, I think we'll get a better sense of what is useful there. I think, if I'm honest, this might sound a little bit counterproductive, but if it has Touch ID and not Face ID, I think I'd be more inclined to go down that road than
that's interesting.
Than use 16.
Yeah, I don't think it will, but you never know. Yeah, interesting. The SE's never been disappointing yet.
No.
From what I remember, the SE's always been, wow, you're getting that processor in there.
It's the Mac Mini, isn't it? It's the Mac Mini of phones. It's just
the features
this
that
plucky little thing that has actually a huge amount of power behind it. And especially now with the silicon chips, you're kind of at a point where you don't really have to worry as much. You're not going to be in a situation. I'd say that the only thing to consider is longevity. You'll probably find that what you're buying with an SE4, an iPhone SE4, is something which might last you 3-4 years. I mean, arguably it could last you longer than that, depending on what your use case is, but you'll notice the slowdown happen quicker on a phone like that versus a 16 Pro Max. And the irony is that a 16 Pro Max could last you 10 years, but we'll probably keep it for less time. It's a weird irony, isn't it? We look at longevity of a cheaper phone as, oh, well, that will give me 10 years of life, which it can. And then you look at a phone that costs, 3-4 times the price, and you keep it for a year. It's weird.
Do you know what? I think for most people, it's a case of, okay, here's a price I'm comfortable with at a monthly payment, and what can I get for that from my provider?
Well, I think that's true to some degree, but I think there's also people who say, well, I'd like to just buy it out. I don't want to be paying it over months. So ideally have something I can just pay for.
True.
It's mine. End of story. I pay for my carrier, I pay for my data, but that's it. I think that's where some people might be.
And of course, in different countries, you have the trade-in options and different purchasing options as well, where you can just get a new phone every year anyway.
Or do I do, which is take every single Apple gadget I own, turn up at the Apple store and say, have you got 3 hours? Yes. Excellent.
I'm returning all these, I'm trading them in. Yes.
Yeah. Look, let's move on. Coming up, we're going to talk about hearing aids. This is Double Tap. Here's how you can get in touch.
Get in touch with Double Tap. Email feedback at doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. And now you can send an audio or video message to us on WhatsApp. That number is 1-613-481-0144.
Okay, Shaun, let's talk all about hearing aids because, look, it's been a big subject recently with Apple announcing hearing aid functionality in the AirPods Pro 2. And it's such an interesting area, especially for us as blind people, because I know some people think, I actually did meet someone once who actually said to me, oh, well, now you're blind, at least you'll never lose your hearing. Someone actually said that to me once, no joke.
Well, as we all know, we've got super hearing, so we don't have to worry about that.
That's right. It'll never go away. But of course, deaf blindness is a reality. People losing hearing later in life is a reality. And blind people can face that as well as can anyone else. I can't believe I'm having to tell people that, but it's true. So for that reason, we thought today we'd get a bit of a broadening of this because, we're hearing about Apple, we're hearing about the hearing aid functionality in the AirPods Pro 2. That's been a headline now for a while. Very interesting. But I want to understand a little bit more about what they call over-the-counter hearing aids, OTC hearing aids. And with us now is a very special guest to join us. Michele Dostaler is an audiologist, and she's joining us now to tell us all about it from WS Audiology. Great to have you here in Double Tap, Michele.
Oh, thanks for having me, gentlemen. Good morning.
It's a fascinating subject, frankly, because, we don't really know much about this from our perspective, because I don't use hearing aids, Shaun doesn't use hearing aids. What are these over-the-counter hearing aids, and how do they compare to what you might call traditional hearing aids?
You know what? As hearing professionals, sometimes we forget that the average person doesn't necessarily have as much knowledge. So it is a great thing to educate ourselves before we make decisions about our hearing health. Over-the-counter hearing aids are a type of hearing device that do not require the intervention of a medical professional. They are regulated by the FDA. They are available in the US. They haven't come over to Canada yet. And generally speaking, it'll be a hearing aid that you can send in your prescription, your hearing loss, your audiogram that you would have received with a hearing test, and the hearing aid will then be programmed to a prescription for you and then sent to you without the intervention of a health professional. So I don't know if you can tell by my tone, but not the ideal scenario.
No.
Well, that is what I was going to ask you, because we've seen features, I'm going to call it a feature, like this in headphones and AirPods and earbuds before. I'm thinking of an app such as, I believe it's called Mimo, which did exactly that. It gave you a hearing test, in air quotes, because I don't know how accurate it is, actually on the phone itself, and then it would adjust the various EQs to try and compensate for any frequency loss. How do you feel about that sort of feature? Obviously, you know, that's very much a homemade. I suppose it doesn't compare in your book?
It doesn't compare, but in my opinion, homemade is better than no made. You know, anything that encourages people to become aware of hearing and their hearing loss, or if they have any hearing loss and that does something to compensate for it, begins the education process. We all in the hearing industry know that it takes about 7 years between finding out that one has a hearing loss and actually choosing to do something about it. So these apps that are available without needing to proclaim your hearing loss to the world and being able to manage your hearing to then discover what else is available out there is a great gateway out there. I encourage people to try all these apps out for sure.
Talk to us about stigma, because that's the other big issue here, ultimately, that comes along. You know, I remember this growing up with wearing glasses. You know, there was stigma of wearing glasses with thick lenses. And, you know, with hearing aids, it's kind of similar, isn't it? People don't feel they want something that makes them stand out. Is that still a concern for a lot of Canadians who are losing hearing, for people?
It's still very much a concern. That's a great question. In fact, what we've seen through studies is that Gen Z, 18 to 26-year-olds, are especially concerned with it, because it's not just about looking old or feeling like you might appear old to someone else. It really comes down to your the ability or the perception of the ability that you might have out there. So for someone with hearing loss, they could be perceived as not having as much authority because they're not participating as much in conversations or in everyday life or in the workplace. If they're missing information during meetings, that's a big worry for someone who's entering the workforce, and to be perceived as having that disability is something that is very stigmatic for sure.
Yeah. I would assume it's something akin to someone who's losing their sight actually getting to the stage of picking up the white stick. You know, it took a lot of time for me to do something like that. And again, it's almost accepting that you've got difficulties, be it a disability or, you know, whatever it may be at that stage. I can see that actually being a problem. And there is, as Stephen said, there is that stigma still attached to acceptance, right?
I wouldn't disagree with that. However, I'd add on the aging factor. I'm not sure that the white stick necessarily signals aging. And, you know, with the perception of older generations and their abilities or lack thereof, that's an additional layer to that stigma.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. I suppose one of the things I want to dissect here for people, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there and a lot of wonderment about the Apple AirPods Pro announcement. You know, everyone's really excited about it. Let's listen to Apple actually describe how this feature will work in reality when it's launched in fall.
This fall, AirPods Pro will have a clinical-grade over-the-counter hearing aid feature. We're adding this groundbreaking capability to help more than 1 billion people living with mild to moderate hearing loss. After you take a hearing test, your AirPods Pro are transformed into a personalized hearing aid, boosting the specific sounds you need in real time, like parts of speech or elements within your environment. This will allow you to hear your surroundings better, to help keep you safe and connect you with people nearby. So it's even easier to hear and engage in conversations.
So that is ultimately what Apple are announcing this year. They're going to be bringing this out. How does this compare? How does this stack up to that traditional hearing aid? Is it the same thing, or is it something else?
It's not the same thing, but it does offer something that leads towards towards the technology that a hearing aid can offer. I'll be honest, I'm really excited to hear that Apple is doing this. Promoting hearing health is a win, no matter how you look at it. Now, is the quality of the Apple hearing aid as good as a hearing aid? For some people, AirPod, for some people, it might actually do the job in a great way at a much lower cost. And I can't dispute that that's not a great thing. However, there are certain limitations. Some of the technologies that exist today in hearing aids are phenomenal at localizing sound, at pinpointing various speakers in a multi-talker situation. And Apple just has not been putting the focus on that, as they've been doing other fantastic things in the Apple kingdom. The other thing that we have to think about is, if we're in need of a hearing aid, just like if we're in need of glasses, we're probably going to be needing them for more than just the 6-hour period that the AirPods offer in terms of battery life. Now, that being said, you could very well have a few pairs of AirPods going and switch them out throughout the day. But the idea, just as with glasses, to make the hearing aids a part of who you are, to restore your hearing and have you participate in life as if, you're your full self.
I suppose as well, it could help, because a lot of the time people really don't notice it. I recently spent time with my parents, and I noticed the TV is incredibly loud. When they're on the telephone, they have it on speakerphone all the time, and they are shouting down their phone. Yeah, I tell my dad to go and get his hearing tested. No, my hearing's fine. You just don't notice the gradual loss sometimes. A sudden loss you might notice, and maybe if they try one of these, the over-the-counter headphones, earbuds, they may notice, actually, this does make a difference, and may make them look to actually, going to a medical professional.
You're right. And then the advantage to having those earbud styles, and which do exist in hearing aid nowadays, the advantage is that then you get to choose whether or not you want to divulge your hearing loss to those around you, right? So if you've got a hearing aid that looks like an earbud, personally, if you do have stigma about your hearing aids, that's a way to deal with that, because you've got a hearing aid that no longer looks like a hearing aid. And the other thing is that if you've got a hearing aid that looks like an earbud, then everyone around you doesn't necessarily know that it is a hearing aid, and it's up to you whether or not you want to discuss that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask a question out of that clip we just listened to there? Because you explained what over-the-counter was really well. I totally get that. When it says clinical grade, what do they mean by that?
So when they're talking about clinical grade, is that they're really paying attention to the to the frequency response. They're not a prescriptive grade. They're not a medical device. Now, hearing aids are medical devices, and so they're very rigorously mandated by organizations that will look at the viability of the aid, the performance of the aid, the safety of the aid. For Apple to be talking about clinical grade, they may have found a way to satisfy the FDA requirements. However, and I've got to say, I'm not an Apple expert. I'm more of an Android user, to be honest. I do have AirPods, though.
Shocking.
I do have AirPods, and I can't wait to try this feature, to be honest. But they, in terms of medical grade, we're talking about being able to follow a prescription very closely. And there are tests that I've seen online where clinicians have put the AirPods through the test to see, in terms of the response that they give, is it in fact appropriate for hearing losses? And I'll be honest, it's not bad. Is it as good as a hearing aid in terms of the range of frequencies? So the different tones that one needs to hear in order to best be able to hear speech clearly. In some cases, it doesn't quite make the cut. Now, this is what I've seen online. I can't say that I've done the tests myself, but to be honest, it looks like a pretty good introductory device for someone who's exploring what a device might do to help their hearing.
Well, that's the key point I want to get to here, because Apple say it themselves. This is for people who have mild to moderate hearing loss. So this is not a replacement really for those professional hearing aids. This is for people who are experiencing those challenges hearing around a table, or perhaps, like Shaun says, his father needs to turn the TV up louder. This is that kind of situation. It's an introduction in a way, but it also does get away from the stigma. So it kind of works on both levels.
It's a win in that situation. Where it might be less effective than a hearing aid is the fact that it's a mild to moderate hearing loss. And for most of us, when we lose hearing in our older years, it typically ends up being those high frequencies that are responsible for treble, for clarity in speech. And the lower frequencies will end up not being as affected by the hearing loss. For that reason, oftentimes the acoustics of the hearing aid fitting, so how much air or how much regular sound are we letting into the ear, affects the quality of the sound, affects the sound of our own voice, and it affects the way that the hearing aid functions in terms of its technology. Having an earbud is fantastic, but optimizing sound for music, you'd probably want to completely close off the ear canal so that you can hear the musical response best. And for hearing speech, especially in noisy environments and where you'd be wanting to localize sound left to right, especially important for someone with a visual impairment, you may in fact want to make sure that you've got the proper acoustic, what we call an acoustic coupling. So the proper fitting inside your ear that allows the proper exchange of natural sound versus amplified sound, depending on your hearing loss.
It's very interesting.
It is. So I think we all see this move as a positive for everyone, right? This is a good thing.
I cannot disagree with that. Yep.
So what about the more, what do we call them? Traditional hearing aids. Where are we at with them? Because I still have a perception of these big beige plastic things stuck behind people's ears, which were quite a size back in the day. So where are we at now with?
Isn't that funny that glasses have come such a long way that we now consider them a fashion accessory, and yet hearing aids are still remembered as this big wad of gum stuck in your ear, or as you say, a big or a big beige banana behind your ear.
Yes.
And yet, and it's so interesting because there really are so many different form factors that you'd be surprised that when you go into a hearing clinic, there are many different types of hearing aid formats that can suit many different types of hearing loss. For example, as I mentioned, there's an earbud called Active Pro IX, and it looks just like an earbud. However, it's got a 34-hour battery life, so you don't have to worry about, not making it through your meeting and through your overnight movie marathon. Plus, with all the fantastic technology of hearing aids, you really get the best of both worlds. You're able to have an absolutely active lifestyle. And I'm not just talking about going to the gym. I'm talking about participating in conversations. We've seen a lot of studies that have shown that hearing aids are the number one factor that is fixable, that is corrigible to keep us from going down into cognitive decline. So by wearing hearing aids when we've got a hearing loss, we are much, much less likely to develop cognitive decline. And I find that's very important. And another factor that leads to cognitive decline is isolation. When you think about a situation where you're not hearing well, it makes you tired to go to a noisy restaurant and try to keep up with the conversation, then you're not going to choose to go to those types of places, and you'll probably choose to stay home and isolate a lot more. So it's a lot to think about. That's more than just about your ears.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, we talk about stigma, but actually the stigma can cause more problems. In a way you feel like get over that. But what you're talking about, of course, is a device which, to all intents and purposes, looks like any other earbud you could buy on the market today. It's like a Bluetooth earbud. And the other interesting thing here is these are not isolated to, not, I say just bringing back hearing or giving you hearing. That, of course, is hugely important. But actually, it's more than that, isn't it? I mean, they connect to your devices. They can connect to your TV. They can connect to your phone so you can listen to music.
Absolutely. So these new devices, the Active Pro iX, they have got Bluetooth LE audio. So you're now able to connect to a wide variety of devices out there seamlessly, which is just fantastic. And what's really great is that your hearing health professional, because you do need that relationship with a hearing health professional, especially, might I add, if you do have some visual deficits, because we rely on our other senses to fill in the blanks. And if you've got any hearing loss plus visual decline, then there are strategies out there that a hearing health professional can guide you through in order to improve and enhance your hearing experience. But when it comes to the streaming, you've got an ability to have a seamless life where you can answer the phone direct from the hearing aid without having to hold your phone. It frees up your hands for, whatever you might need, stability or grocery bags or carrying your child. It's really quite amazing what you're able to do out there.
So what's the picture when it comes to people with hearing loss, those who are deaf and hard of hearing in Canada? How widespread is this?
It is quite widespread. I'd say probably about, and what's hard is a lot of the studies that are out there are looking at either identified hearing loss or self-identified hearing loss. So people who would admit to it. And as we spoke about, stigma is there and not everyone is willing to admit. And we've all had that conversation with someone, maybe in our family, maybe in our circle of friends, where, I can hear fine, people are mumbling, or I can hear fine, but when there's a lot of noise, everybody's got a hard time hearing. So it becomes harder and harder to really get a picture of the hearing loss. But I believe it's 60 to 70% of older Canadians have hearing loss in some form or other.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So what product does your company provide?
So WSA is a manufacturer of some pretty great products. There are two main brands with WSA called Stigma, of which the Active Pro IX is one. And then there's Widex as well, that has some terrific hearing aids that really pride themselves on being true to sound, and the processing is very different. Stigma is a brand that is known for hearing clarity and hearing intelligibility in noise. They really outperform the competition when it comes to especially multiple talkers in noise. And they're also fantastic when it comes to the breadth of form factors, so the types and looks of the different hearing aids, which are meant to combat stigma and attract people to give it a try, to ask the questions. Having a larger variety means that, people feel more comfortable having that choice and opening that discussion. Widex, on the other hand, is a brand that is absolutely phenomenal. It's known to be very popular with musicians in particular because of the lack of delay in the sound. The processing is extremely fast. And so it's a very true sound that is just phenomenal for those with a very specific ear. However, don't let it limit you to musicians. Widex really does have a very nice, calm sound signature. When you think about the different hearing aids, you wonder which brand is better than another brand. And each brand has their strengths, but each brand's focus is to make sure that your hearing is better, is significantly better, and that you are able to perform as you want. But when you look at the sound signature of the different companies, they will focus on different things. So some will focus on having a more open sound, so you can really hear the sounds around you really clearly. Other companies will focus more on having a sound where speech is the primary goal, where really what you want is for, you're willing to forego other sounds around you in order for speech to come out the best. And that's why it's really best to sit down and have a conversation with a hearing health professional to sort of situate where you are, what your needs are, and what's going to be most appropriate for you.
So the advice is, if you feel, you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, I am having these challenges, I maybe should deal with this, go and see an audiologist, go speak to someone, get the test done. And at that point, then essentially you have a range of options available for over-the-counter hearing aids like Stigma.
Absolutely. And, at the very least, having a baseline to know where your hearing is at the moment, so that if something changes along the way, there are a lot of factors out there that can affect your hearing that you might not even know. Some medications can affect your hearing. And sometimes those medications affect those frequencies that are so high that you really don't notice it from day to day. But where it starts to take an effect is in those complicated situations with lots of background noise, where suddenly you notice that you're really having a hard time following the conversation, even though when you're one-on-one or in a small group, you're absolutely fine. There's medications, there are certain illnesses, diabetes, MS, there are all kinds of issues out there that can cause hearing loss. And then another thing that we haven't talked about is tinnitus. So some of us have ringing in our ears, and that actually could be a sign of a little bit of hearing loss. So great idea to just get a baseline and get an idea of where we're at, so that if there are any changes down the line, then we really have a clear picture of what's happening.
This has been really interesting today. I've learned a lot here. Shaun?
Yeah, me too. No, absolutely. Where do you see... It's funny, doing a tech show, we're talking about AI all the time and how it's...
He's going to bring AI into. I knew he'd bring AI in eventually.
Yes. Well, it's implanting itself in so much, and I'm pretty sure I saw something on a hearing aid where it would almost reconstruct some speech that it couldn't. It may seem a little bit garbled. And you mentioned, being able to almost that beam forming microphone technology where it can zero in and zoom in on an individual speaker. I mean, it seems like hearing aids, they've had this old-fashioned sort of image for the longest time, but they do seem to be making the most of the new tech.
The technology is incredible, and the pace of the development of technology is unheard of. I've been in the industry now for 16 years, and the changes that I've seen are unbelievable. The AI developments are only going to skyrocket from here in. Right now, there are some fantastic AI developments where you can tailor the sound of your hearing aid based on the situation you're in at the moment. And the system will, based on an app, the app will ask you questions about what are you struggling with in that environment, and generate changes in your hearing aid, and then ask for your feedback. And so it will self-adjust based on your feedback as well as the input it's receiving from the environment. And the AI comes in where this is happening and shared into a cloud where users around the world who are in similar situations are inputting what their preferences are. And the system keeps recalculating to make suggestions that are based on what has been most successful around the world.
Wow.
Amazing.
My goodness.
Yeah, so cool.
I was happy
Your over-the-counter hearing aid is never going to be able to perform in that way.
I was just expecting you to say, yeah, we'll probably get some AI in there at some point. I wasn't expecting that.
No, we are well on our way to AIville. It's impressive.
That is incredible. Michele, it's been great talking today. Thank you so much for coming on. Come back soon, because this is a great topic. We should talk more.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Michele.
And that's it for Double Tap today. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back again on Monday. Catch you then, Shaun. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.